Where's Earth?
Seems we have intercepted a transmission of unknown origin.
Human.
In space, no one can hear you scream. Alien wasn't just a sci-fi horror masterpiece. It was a production nightmare that nearly killed its cast, traumatized its crew, and created one of cinema's most disturbing creatures through real blood, genuine terror, and methods so extreme they'd be banned today. Behind every perfectly crafted scare lies a story of creative chaos, actors passing out from shock, oxygen-deprived performances in sweltering spacesuits, and a director who deliberately tortured his own cast to capture authentic terror. From Ridley Scott's sadistic directing methods to H.R. Giger's nightmarish designs that made grown men weep, the making of Alien pushed everyone involved to their breaking point. Here are 20 weird facts about Alien that prove the real horror happened behind the cameras, and stick around for our bonus fact that reveals the single most disturbing detail about this production that even hardcore fans don't know. Let's dive into the darkness. The chestburster scene was real torture. The most iconic scene in horror history was achieved through actual psychological torture. The actors didn't know it was going to happen, and Scott deliberately kept the cast in the dark about the specifics. Only John Hurt knew a creature would emerge from his chest. The rest? They thought it would be a simple prosthetic reveal. Instead, Scott rigged Hurt's torso with pressurized blood tubes containing real sheep's blood and offal. When the creature burst through, it sprayed 3 feet of gore directly into Veronica Cartwright's face. Cartwright passed out when this jet of blood caught her. The terror you see on screen isn't acting. It's genuine shock from actors who felt betrayed by their own director. Scott's gamble worked, but at the cost of his cast's trust and mental health. H.R. Giger's original Alien design made people vomit. H.R. Giger's biomechanical nightmares weren't just visually disturbing, they were physically sickening. The Swiss artist's original concepts were so graphically sexual and violent that 20th Century Fox executives literally threw up during presentation meetings. Giger had designed the alien's life cycle as an explicit metaphor for sexual assault, with phallic imagery so aggressive that even hardened studio heads couldn't stomach it. The facehugger's design combined male and female sexual organs in ways that made viewers physically ill. Giger's workshop became a place crew members avoided. Those brave enough to visit often fled within minutes, nauseated by the grotesque sculptures and paintings covering every surface. The final creature we see on screen is actually the toned-down version of Giger's original vision. The Nostromo set was a health hazard death trap. The ship's interiors were designed to be claustrophobic and maze-like, but they were also genuinely dangerous. Production designer Michael Seymour and his team used airplane scrap and other industrial parts to build the set, creating a maze of sharp metal edges, exposed wiring, and unstable platforms. The corridors were so narrow that actors regularly scraped against jagged surfaces, leaving many with permanent scars. The air circulation was almost non-existent. Actors frequently collapsed from heat exhaustion and oxygen deprivation. Harry Dean Stanton suffered a panic attack during filming when he became trapped in a ventilation shaft for over an hour. The set was later condemned by British health and safety officials, but only after filming wrapped. Every claustrophobic moment you feel watching the film was genuinely experienced by the cast. Sigourney Weaver was hired for all the wrong reasons. Sigourney Weaver almost wasn't cast as Ripley, and when she was, it was for reasons that would horrify modern audiences. Studio executives initially wanted her because at 5'11", she was tall enough to be believable when fighting the 7-foot alien, but the real reason was darker. They wanted an actress who looked fragile enough to seem genuinely threatened, yet strong enough to survive to the final scene. The original script had Ripley dying in the final act with the alien wearing her voice to contact Earth. Weaver fought against this ending, arguing that audiences needed to see a woman triumph through intelligence, not just luck. Her rewrites shaped Ripley into the feminist icon she became, but not without heated battles with writers who insisted audiences wouldn't accept a masculine female hero. The spacesuits nearly killed the cast. The cast faced hardships during filming, including wearing heavy and uncomfortable spacesuits that caused oxygen deprivation. The spacesuits weren't costumes, they were functional environmental suits weighing over 60 pounds each. The helmets had no internal air circulation, forcing actors to breathe their own recycled carbon dioxide for hours at a time. Tom Skerritt passed out twice during exterior shooting. Yaphet Kotto developed severe claustrophobia that lasted years after production ended. The suits were so heavy that actors couldn't move naturally, creating the slow, deliberate movements that actually enhanced the film's tension. But the physical cost was enormous. Several cast members required medical treatment for heat exhaustion and panic disorders that persisted long after filming wrapped. Dallas's death scene used a real corpse. The alien's violent dispatch of Captain Dallas required more than special effects. It required actual human remains. When the creature drags Tom Skerritt's character into the airshaft, the production used a real human skeleton acquired from a medical supply company. The bones were wrapped in latex and synthetic skin, but the skull and rib cage were genuine. This wasn't unusual for 1970s filmmaking, but it created an eerie atmosphere on set. Actors knew they were handling real human remains during rehearsals. Skerritt later revealed that touching actual bones made the death scenes feel unnaturally real and contributed to the disturbing authenticity of his final performance. The skeleton was never returned to the supplier and remains part of the film's props to this day. The alien was played by a 7-foot Nigerian design student. The creature that terrorized audiences wasn't created through elaborate puppetry. It was a 7'2" Nigerian design student named Bolaji Badeyo. Scott discovered Badeyo in a London bar and was struck by his unusually tall, thin frame and naturally fluid movements. Badeyo had no acting experience but possessed the exact physicality Scott envisioned for the alien. Training Badeyo to move like the creature took months. He studied snake and insect locomotion, learning to move his limbs independently and unnaturally. Inside the biomechanical suit, Badeyo could barely see or breathe, yet delivered a performance so unsettling that it still defines movie monsters today. Tragically, Badeyo returned to Nigeria after filming and died young, making Alien his only film appearance. The facehugger was operated by real human hands. The facehugger's disturbing organic movements weren't achieved through puppetry, they were created by human hands. Special effects artist Roger Dicken built the creature around his own hands and arms, allowing him to control its movements from inside. The breathing motion was Dicken's actual breathing transmitted through pneumatic tubes. The most unsettling aspect of the facehugger wasn't its appearance, but its touch. Dicken could feel through the creature's skin, making its interactions with John Hurt's face genuinely tactile and responsive. When the facehugger dies and releases Kane, that's Dicken's actual hands going limp. The acidic blood that burns through the ship's hull was achieved by drilling holes in the floor and pouring acid through them in real time, creating genuine chemical reactions. Jerry Goldsmith's score was mutilated against his will. Jerry Goldsmith composed one of cinema's most haunting scores, but what audiences heard wasn't what he intended. Scott and the editors butchered Goldsmith's work, replacing entire sequences with temp music and classical pieces. Goldsmith's original score was far more experimental, incorporating electronic distortions and atonal compositions that matched Geiger's biomechanical aesthetic. The famous main theme was actually Goldsmith's music for the end credits, moved by Scott without the composer's permission. Goldsmith was so infuriated by the changes that he refused to attend the film's premiere. Later, he admitted the edited version worked better, but the betrayal damaged his relationship with Scott permanently. The unused portions of Goldsmith's score remain some of the most haunting music never heard in cinema. The cat almost killed Sigourney Weaver. Jones the cat wasn't just comic relief. He was a genuine hazard. During Ripley's final confrontation with the alien, the cat was supposed to remain calm in Weaver's arms. Instead, the animal panicked, clawing deep. Gouges in Weaver's chest and neck. Blood from her wounds is visible in several shots, adding unintended realism to her desperation. The cat's panic was triggered by the alien suit's strange smell and sounds. Multiple takes were ruined when Jones would hiss and flee, or worse, urinate on Weaver during tense moments. The final sequence required a cat wrangler and mild sedatives to keep Jones manageable. Ironically, the cat's genuine fear enhanced the scenes. Its terror reads as completely authentic because it was. Before we continue, go ahead and like and subscribe, because the facts we're about to reveal get even more disturbing. And you won't want to miss what happens when a legendary director calls Ridley Scott to figure out how he achieved the impossible. Stanley Kubrick called to demand secrets. Ridley Scott remembers the day Stanley Kubrick got him on the phone to explain exactly how he accomplished Alien's classic chestburster scene. The master filmmaker behind 2001: A Space Odyssey was so baffled by the practical effects that he personally contacted Scott, demanding technical details. Kubrick couldn't understand how Scott achieved the perfect timing of blood spray and creature emergence without digital effects. Scott walked him through the entire setup: the pressurized blood system, the hidden crew operating the creature, the precise choreography required. Kubrick's fascination with the scene validated Scott's brutal methods, but also revealed how groundbreaking the practical effects truly were. When the most technically minded director in cinema history calls asking, "How did you do that?" logically, you know you've achieved something extraordinary. The alien's blood burned through 5 floors. The alien's acidic blood wasn't just a plot device, it was a real chemical hazard. The production used actual hydrofluoric acid and other corrosive chemicals to achieve the burning effects. When the acid eats through the Nostromo's floor, it genuinely burned through 5 separate layers of the studio's soundstage. The chemical reactions were uncontrolled and unpredictable. On several occasions, the acid burned through areas not intended for destruction, damaging expensive equipment and endangering crew members. Scott had to rebuild sections of the set multiple times after acid damage exceeded expectations. The lingering chemical smell on set was so intense that several crew members developed respiratory problems. Modern safety regulations would never permit such dangerous practical effects. Dan O'Bannon wrote the script while literally dying. The Alien screenplay emerged from genuine suffering. Writer Dan O'Bannon was battling Crohn's disease during the writing process, experiencing severe abdominal pain and internal bleeding. His descriptions of the chestburster scene came directly from his own physical agony, the feeling of something alien and violent tearing through his body. O'Bannon's medical condition influenced every aspect of the creature's life cycle. The facehugger's forced impregnation, the gestating embryo, the violent birth, all reflected his experience with his own body betraying him. He wrote many scenes while hospitalized, channeling his pain into the script. The body horror that makes Alien so disturbing wasn't imagination, it was O'Bannon's lived experience with physical trauma transformed into science fiction. The alien suit cost more than most houses. The biomechanical alien costume was the most expensive single prop ever created at the time, costing over $100,000 in 1978 dollars, equivalent to nearly $500,000 today. H.R. Geiger's design required specialized materials: aircraft-grade aluminum for the skeletal structure, custom-molded fiberglass for the skin, and hand-painted details using pigments that cost more than gold. Every element was functional. The extending inner jaw was a complex mechanical system requiring precise timing. The suit's cooling system prevented the actor from overheating, but often malfunctioned, trapping Badejo in a furnace-like prison. Multiple backup suits were built after the original was damaged during filming, making the total Alien costume budget exceed the entire catering costs for the production. Real sheep organs were hidden in John Hurt's body. The infamous chestburster scene was incredibly messy, with real animal organs used. The production packed John Hurt's fake torso with fresh sheep liver, kidneys, and intestines acquired from local butchers. The organs weren't preserved or treated. They were genuinely rotting during filming. The smell was overwhelming. Crew members regularly vomited during chestburster rehearsals and takes. The organic materials created a nauseating realism that enhanced everyone's genuine disgust. By the end of filming, the decomposing organs had attracted flies and developed a stench so powerful that the entire soundstage had to be fumigated. The visceral horror audiences feel isn't manufactured. It's the natural human response to genuine decay and death. The film nearly killed its own director. Ridley Scott pushed himself beyond physical and mental limits during production. Working 18-hour days in poorly ventilated sound stages while breathing chemical fumes and decaying organic matter, Scott developed severe respiratory problems and chronic insomnia. He collapsed twice during filming and was hospitalized for exhaustion. Scott's obsession with practical effects meant he was exposed to every hazard his cast and crew faced. He breathed acid vapors, handled decomposing organs, and spent hours in spaces contaminated with industrial chemicals. His deteriorating health affected his judgment, leading to increasingly dangerous creative decisions. The nightmarish atmosphere on screen reflected Scott's own descent into physical and psychological breakdown. Veronica Cartwright's scream was overdubbed because it was too real. When the chestburster sprayed blood into Veronica Cartwright's face, her scream of shock and terror was so genuine and disturbing that it had to be replaced in post-production. The original audio was deemed too intense for audiences. Her voice conveyed real trauma rather than acted fear. Sound engineers worked for weeks to create a scream that felt authentic but not psychologically damaging to viewers. Cartwright's actual reaction was kept for reference but never used in the final mix. The actress revealed years later that the experience gave her nightmares for months and made her suspicious of directors who claimed they wanted natural reactions from their performers. The derelict ship was built around a real human spine. The alien spacecraft's interior incorporated actual human anatomical elements. The massive rib-like structures were built around a genuine human spine acquired from a medical school. The curved walls featured real bone fragments embedded in the fiberglass, creating an unsettling organic texture that cameras captured in disturbing detail. Walking through the derelict ship's set felt genuinely unnerving because it was constructed from death. Actors reported feeling physically ill in the space, sensing something fundamentally wrong about their surroundings. The psychological impact wasn't coincidental. Scott deliberately used human remains to create an environment that would genuinely disturb his performers and translate that unease to the screen. The film's ending was reshot because test audiences rioted. The original ending had Ripley successfully escaping in the shuttle, only to discover the alien had laid eggs throughout the ship. Test audiences became so enraged by this twist that several people physically attacked the projection booth, demanding the film be stopped. The reaction was so violent that 20th Century Fox called security to escort executives from the building. Scott was forced to reshoot the ending, creating the final confrontation we know today. The original version still exists in the studio archives but has never been publicly screened since that disastrous test. The audience's violent reaction proved that Alien had achieved something unprecedented, genuine psychological trauma in viewers who felt betrayed by the filmmaker's cruelty. The movie created a new phobia classification. Alien's impact extended beyond cinema into medical literature. Psychologists began documenting cases of xenomorphophobia, an irrational fear of alien intrusion and bodily invasion. The film's imagery was so psychologically effective that it triggered genuine anxiety disorders in susceptible viewers. Mental health professionals reported treating patients whose panic attacks were directly linked to specific scenes in Alien. The chestburster sequence in particular created a new category of body horror trauma. Medical journals published papers analyzing the film's ability to trigger primal fears of violation, death, and loss of bodily autonomy. Alien didn't just entertain audiences, it rewired their psychological responses to fear itself. Here's the most disturbing detail about Alien's creation. The creature's vocalizations incorporated actual human death sounds. Sound designer Ben Burt recorded audio from hospital patients in their final moments, capturing the specific breathing patterns and vocal distortions of people dying from respiratory failure. These recordings were layered into the alien's breathing and hissing sounds. The families of these patients never gave permission for their loved ones' final moments to be used in a horror film. The recordings were obtained through a medical contact and used without consent. This means that every time the alien breathes on screen, audiences are hearing the actual sounds of human death. The creature's terrifying presence isn't just performance and effects, it's literally haunted by real human mortality. This fact was kept secret for decades and only revealed in a 2009 documentary about the film's sound design. Alien transformed from a simple sci-fi thriller into something far more disturbing, a film that used genuine human suffering, real death, and actual trauma to create entertainment. The line between fiction and reality dissolved so completely that the production became as monstrous as the creature it created. In space, no one can hear you scream. On the Alien set, everyone could hear the screams, and they were real. If you think you can handle more behind-the-scenes horrors, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, what's the most disturbing movie production fact you've ever heard? In space, no one can hear you scream, but down here, we're listening.